Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the W1 Body Transformation Podcast. And in case you're watching this, welcome to my video. I don't really know what is much of it to watch, but anyways, in case if you like my pretty slash not so pretty face, go and watch it. Second is, in case if you're a client and if you're watching this on my educational vault, then welcome. And with regards to those people who are not my clients who are watching this on YouTube or listening this on podcasts, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, every week I have an educational vault in my coaching service besides the one-to-one support that I give my clients. And that's updated every week with latest cutting edge information which is not uploaded on YouTube. So yeah. And before we get cracking, whatever I mentioned in this video or podcast is solely for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is not legal or medical advice. Anything that you want to do is solely at your own risk, or if you want to do something, please consult a physician or a doctor before you do it. The second thing is, before we get cracking, feel free to like, share, subscribe. It just helps me get to more people out there. So yeah, that basically is it. Now, I was asked this question. Well, I wasn't really asked this question, but I had a client come on board and he requested for flexible calories and macros throughout the week. He had this notion that he's supposed to stick to the same calories, the same protein, the same carbohydrates, and the same fats throughout the week. Now, this comes under the topic of flexible dieting, which is a broad topic. So I'm just going to be covering two aspects of flexible dieting, which is, should you be rigid across with your calories throughout the week? That is, if let's say you're eating 2,000 calories, should you be eating sharp 2,000 calories only? Or it can be plus or minus something like 100 calories basically, right? And the other thing is, same goes for the macronutrients. Should you be rigid with your macronutrients, or it can be plus or minus 5 or 10 grams basically? So this is a topic which I'm going to be covering in the podcast, okay? So the answer is, it depends on your phase. In case if you're on a fat loss phase where your calories are controlled, you're like weighing each and every gram of the food, it makes more sense for you to err on the rigid side of things, but plus or minus something like 5 to 10% of your calories would be like a good recommendation for being in a fat loss phase, right? So in case if you're on 2,000 calories, what is something like 5%? It would probably be something like 100 calories, right? So either we be on something like 1900 calories, or you can be on something like 2100 calories, right? If you are consistent and you're living a lifestyle across the average span of the week, things are going to even themselves out basically, right? So that's one. The second thing is, in case if you're in a muscle building phase, the same rule applies. Plus, during the muscle building phase, plus or minus something like 5 to 10% of your calories would be a good idea. Now, one thing that I often look at is, in case if the client is tracking everything down to a T, is in a fat loss phase, and let's say progress halts, then I'll probably go like, we might want to be like really, really accurate. It's better if you go like minus 5, 10% of your calories, but don't go like plus 5, 10% of your calories, just to ensure like we are doing a bit of an audit and we are 100% sure before we add in some extra cardio or whatever, so that we can make a clear decision, so that progress is always linear. That's one aspect of things. Now the other thing is, in case if you're in a muscle building phase, or if you're in an off-season phase or a maintenance phase, right? What are these phases? Off-season is where you still have the same amount of discipline, the same habits, with a little bit of flexibility, but plus or minus 5 or 10% would be absolutely fine. In case if you're in a maintenance phase where you have, either you are between a fat loss phase and a muscle building phase, and it's more like a bridge where you're neither gaining weight, you're not dropping body fat basically. You're neither building muscle, you're not dropping body fat, but it's more like a bridge. Then around that time, we can follow the rule, but the rigidity would slightly be more than a muscle building phase, but it would be slightly less than a fat loss phase basically. So I hope that answers your question. Now, from a lifestyle perspective, let's probably say, right, in case if you know that you're gonna have like a bit of an event during the weekend, right, Saturday, Sunday, right, and there are going to be a couple of drinks coming in, and you are extremely skilled at like guesstimating your calories from outside because you've been tracking your calories for years on food scale. You can eyeball things. ChatGPT is not trustworthy. Then in that particular case, let's probably say, right, we reduce the calories by a specific amount from Monday to Friday or whatever frequency you want to do, and then we can increase the calories over Saturday and Sunday, but the net average weekly calorie load would still be like your weekly calorie intake. So this can be done like in a maintenance phase, in an off-season muscle building phase where your calories are high, where your budget for calories are high, and it wouldn't be an issue. It can still be done during a fat loss phase, but during a fat loss phase, as a moment when you drop body fat, your hunger levels go up, so it's not really suggested. But in case if you're like a lifestyle client, yes, and you got no other option, cool, that's absolutely fine as well. But don't do it from a place of restrict and binge, because that's going to create a negative eating pattern. Trust me, I've been there, I've done that in the past, and now I'm very different. I am much more balanced with my diet, and I'm much more consistent. I'm consistent with my diet regardless of any phase that I am in, basically, because I've accepted the fact that, hey, there are certain things that we got to do, right? In case if you follow this like restrict or like binge, and the next day you restrict yourself, you're never going to come out of it, basically, right? Trust me. So don't do that. The same thing applies for macronutrients. So 1 gram of protein has something like 4 calories. 1 gram of carb has something like 4 calories. 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. So the same rule applies right here. But for proteins and carbs, protein, I'll probably go like protein is a very important macronutrient. Plus, because that is essential for retaining muscle, that is essential for helping the muscle recovery in case if you're training progressively. And carbohydrates are not that important, but they actually give you energy. Fat beyond a certain point are not that important, and they just rip the budget out of the calories because they're extremely calorie dense. So in my suggestion, basically, I'd probably say like protein plus or minus 5 to 10 grams would be a good idea. Plus or minus 5 grams would be a good idea regardless of which phase you are in. For carbs, plus or minus 10 grams would be a good idea. For fats, plus or minus 5 grams would be a good idea because they're extremely calorie dense. But these are not some hard and fast rigid rules. The same lifestyle rules still apply. So yeah, this is how we can be flexible with our diet. And that basically is it, right? Now, in case if you don't want to stick to these rules, the only thing that I probably have you look at is your calories, your protein, and your fiber intake throughout the week, because calories determine whether you lose weight, whether you don't lose weight, and in case if you stack that up with resistance training, whole foods, etc., that's going to lead to better health outcomes, muscle building, retention, yada yada yada, which is all that jazz, which is a long topic, which is what I'm not going to dwell into this video. Right, in case you're in a fat loss phase, yes, you've got to be in a calorie deficit. You need to be sticking to your calories. In case if you're on a maintenance phase, you still need to be sticking to your calories. In case if you are on a muscle building phase, you still need to be sticking to your calories, basically, right? But in my opinion, it makes more sense for you to go, I know I'm going off on a tangent right now, but in my opinion, it makes more sense for you to be on more of like a high carb, high protein, moderate fat approach during a muscle building phase. Same goes during the maintenance phase, because carbs tend to keep you fuller after protein and fats don't tend to keep you fuller. The second thing is protein is another important macronutrient, right? That's the second thing that we need to look at regardless of which phase you are in. So if you're eating the right amount of protein, provided that you're flexible with your intake, during a fat loss phase, when the calories are low, that's going to help you retain muscle. During a maintenance phase, when the calories are moderate, it's still going to help you retain a slightly built muscle in case if you're still a newbie. And in case if you are in a muscle building phase, excessive protein beyond high protein intake beyond a certain point is solely going to be converted to carbohydrates, and well, this is just a simplified version. Glycogen, basically, it's going to be converted to glycogen, which is a fancy term for carbohydrates, basically. But instead, you're better off eating the right amount of protein and eating more carbohydrates. But in case if you like eating more protein, fuck it, go and be my guest. But yeah, during the maintenance and a fat loss phase, no, during the maintenance and a muscle building phase, it makes more sense for you to be on a high carb approach and a moderate fat approach, because fat beyond a certain point is not really going to do much, basically, beyond wasting the budget of your calories, not keeping you full for the amount of calories that it gives you, and anything beyond a certain point, I mean, yeah, after you're going to be using it for hormonal production in case if you're natural, it's just going to be a waste of calories in my opinion. So yeah, this is my take. People, in case if you found this useful, feel free to like, share, subscribe, and in case if you're interested in coaching, all you need to do is fill in the application form below, and feel free to check out my Instagram. So yeah, have a nice day.